So guys, welcome to another video. Welcome to part 3 of this maintenance.
In total, with my garage included, it's like part 7 or 8 or something.
Yeah, part 7 or 8 and part 3 of doing the full maintenance on this car. So in this video we're actually going to be installing new front brake discs, brake pads, and we're going to be swapping the car over to braided lines and flush everything that's in the brake system just to be sure that we have high temp racing fluid.
Okay.
So that we can go stop as fast as we probably will go if the engine doesn't explode before that. But
yeah.
it runs good. We did, however, find an issue with the crank pulley. Yay! That's for another video. But today, brakes. So we have a brake or bleeder to bleed the brakes. New fluid. I went with Motil 660, just a higher temp fluid. And then new brake pads and brake discs. Hi Ben, you like new brake discs? And I went with Brembos just because these, yeah, could get delivered pretty fast. And they're drilled. Now normally I'm not such a fan of drilled rotors. I'm more like a slotted kind of guy. But yeah, I didn't find any slotted that were gonna get delivered fast and didn't cost like too much money. So we're gonna be installing these on the front. Looks good, don't you?
Yeah, looks good.
Alright, so let's first see if we can actually get the old ones off.
Yeah, let's try that first.
So guys, as you will probably see, we started off by removing the complete caliper and carrier from the front hub, just because we're also replacing the front discs, but we will be loosening up the caliper from the carrier to get to the brake pads. So if your brake caliper seems to be stuck on, you can always, or if your brake disc has a lip because it's worn out, you can just push back a bit with a screwdriver on the brake pads on the side of the piston to push it back, and then it will release from the brake disc. And then to loosen up the brake disc, there's this little locking bolt. Just loosen that up. It's a Torx bit, and then the disc comes off very nicely. Also, when you are installing a brand new brake disc, make sure to first clean it with brake cleaner so that the protective coating is actually removed, otherwise you're gonna have a bad braking experience. So just clean it with brake cleaner and then you are all set to install it.
So that's the new brake disc, already installed, fits perfectly. It's the same size as OEM, so it should fit perfectly. Now let me know in the comments, are you fans of like fully drilled rotors, or are you more slotted kind of guy? Let me know, I want to know the opinions, so maybe if we upgrade to know what to get. But one thing's for sure, that's going in the bin.
When you come to installing your new brake pads, make sure to first compress the piston from the caliper like fully inside so you have the maximum amount of clearance to get your pads installed over your brake disc. And then once everything installed, do not forget to first pump your brakes a couple of times to make sure that everything is back to the perfect spot and it's actually contacting your brake disc. Otherwise, the first time you brake, you will not have any brakes in the front. So after that, let's go and get those brake lines switched out.
Anton?
So guys, to change them out, so first you loosen up the top little nut at the chassis for your brake line, and then the bottom one will just slide out, and then you loosen up this banjo bolt and reinstall the new line with a new banjo bolt and a new crush washer to seal. So as you guys can see, we have our new brake lines, so the new crush washers, new bolts, then the line itself, and then it goes straight to the chassis. So we have this little grommet to put it on here, but we'll do that later once we assemble everything back. Now, this is a really easy job to do. So one thing you need to look out for, the fronts are the same, but between 2003, I think 2004, Mini changed the rear calipers to not have the banjo bolt anymore on the caliper itself. So make sure if you order brake lines for your R53 to check if it's a pre-2003 model or a 2004 and up car. Now we're gonna just do the same in the rear, and then it's bleeding time. So guys, a bit of a fast forward, and now we got our new Brembo discs and our new brake pads installed on the car. We also got our new stainless steel brake lines in, so these go from the caliper all the way to the hard lines that are running through the car. So we got new discs and pads on the front and stainless lines all around. Now before we can actually go drive this car, we need to do a mandatory brake bleeding. Now for that, I got this little thingy. So this is actually a vacuum type bleeder. So we're gonna open the nipple, put this little hose on it. It's nice and clear, brand new, so we're gonna hopefully we're gonna be able to see when the new fluid is coming through. And for new fluid, I got this DOT4 Motul 660 oil, which was recommended to me. I got 1 liter of this, and hopefully, normally that should be enough to get the system bled. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna get started by, first of all, removing the fluid that's still in the reservoir. Gonna put some new Motul in it, and then we're gonna work from the back to the front. So always the furthest caliper first. So if we open the hood, you'll see this is a brake fluid reservoir right here. Cap is currently off because we were changing out the brake lines. So what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be draining this, and then we're going to work the furthest one first. So first we're going to do the passenger rear, the driver rear, and passenger front and driver front. So that first, drain this reservoir and put some new Motul in it. So guys, as you can see, this brake fluid is really discolored. Probably been in there a while and took a lot of moisture out of it. I absorbed a lot of moisture, that's why you have to change your brake fluid. But so hopefully this color, we're gonna easily be able to see when the new fluid is coming through. So now I'm gonna fill up the reservoir, and then we're gonna start bleeding on one side, and keep an eye on the reservoir and make sure it's full every time we start bleeding. Fresh, clean fluid. Gotta top it off very full. And now let's get to bleeding. So right now guys, I got a spanner on the rear farthest brake. So I'm expecting some air bubbles because we removed the lines, and I'm expecting a lot of disgusting fluid to come out of this. So let's try this out. Let's loosen it up. Brake nipple. As you guys could have seen, I wasn't bleeding anything, so I removed the nipple, and actually the little hole in the bleeder was gunked up. It just could not do anything. So after cleaning it out and spraying it out with brake cleaner a bunch, we now got a nice passage for it to bleed, so we can put it back on the caliper and bleed this brake, hopefully. I can clean this up a bit because it's beginning to get a bit messy already. We just got started. So now let's put this in here. Put this on here. Open up the bleed screw. So guys, little disclaimer, if your bleeder comes with this kind of tip, cut it off. This thing just was sucking in air and I didn't think was bleeding, so I just cut off the tube and put the tube directly on the bleed nipple, and it was 1,000 times easier. So this side is now bled, so now we can do the other side and then move on to the front. So as you guys can see, we now have clean blade fluid. Now with these vacuum bleeders, what I've seen in a lot of videos, and I thought I was doing it wrong and I had an air leak somewhere, but apparently I did not. But what you have is this: when you start bleeding, it looks like you're pulling air. Now you are actually not pulling air. It's just fluid, and because of the pull of the vacuum, I guess, that you can get some air bubbles from maybe around the threads of the bleed nipple. But if you stop and you see this nice continuous stream without any air bubbles keep coming out of the bleed nipple, then that job's a good one. Also, it's always a tip to keep your hose up so that this becomes the highest point. So if there's any air trap lower down, then it will always rise up to the top. So if you were to put it beneath the bleed nipple, yeah, maybe some air can get trapped in the bleed nipple itself, or I don't know. It's just a nice thing to always keep your hose going up. Cool. So guys, right now the brakes are, all 4 brakes are bled. I topped off our little reservoir with fresh fluid, so now it's much cleaner. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna run the engine and push the brakes, just press the brakes a bit. That's just because the new brake pads, like, we pushed back the cylinder, so these still need to clamp. So we're gonna make sure that these clamp nice and shut, and then we're gonna check the level once more, and hopefully the pedal feel will be nice and firm. So let's try that out. And also I just want to hear the car to run one more time. So guys, sorry, I still did not get a wide angle, so nice and firm. Oh my god. So the first few are a bit squishy, but now that's a nice and firm pedal feel. I'm just gonna pressurize the whole system a bit more. If we have any leaks, it will start leaking out where it is, but nice firm pedal pressure. And with that we are done with the brake maintenance on the Mini. So we did new stainless lines, put some new discs and pads on the front, and we got some fresh fluid in her. So right now it's almost time to get this car back on the ground again. Now let's check the list, because we are getting there. So if we take a look, we did the engine oil, we did the spark plugs, transmission fluid, air filter, the coolant hoses, coolant flush. Power steering I still need to do a second time, just because we circled it around and I just want to put some more fresh fluid in. And then we have our supercharger has been serviced, our intercooler boots have been changed, our brake line, our brake fluid flush has been done, new front brake pads, and now I actually need to end the crank pulley. Because for some reason, so if we take a look at the crank pulley, let me put this wiring out of the way for a second, you can see, maybe underneath on the other side here, there are like booger welds all around it. And I finally found out why that is. Now these are actually prone for coming apart. The center part actually has like a rubber dampener in it, and that the outside ring, which turns everything, is actually attached by friction. Now when these like wear out, the outside, so the ring where the belt connects to, is actually can separate from the inner side of the pulley. Now I think the previous owner like had this issue, didn't want to replace this because it's like a 200 plus euro part, and he thought, why not just weld this thing back together. Now the problem with that is, because these pulleys have to be aligned perfectly, I now have a pulley that not only does this when the engine's turning, but it also does this. So it's a bit messy, and this cannot be good for this engine. So I'm not gonna be driving this car or having it running at high RPM for long periods of time, because I want to change that first. So actually in the next video I'm actually gonna be talking about a company which is gonna make this right for us. But that's where I'm gonna end this week's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, maybe learned something about doing brakes on a Mini, and in the end I just really enjoy doing this myself, and I'm really looking forward to how these Brembo brakes are going to, well, they are real Brembos, but they're OEM fit with OEM pads, so I don't know if this is gonna be better or not. We'll see once we hit the track. But that's all I got time for this week, guys. Aaron needed to run, so he's not here anymore, but I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next week for another one.